Today's episode of the Steady Trade Podcast is brought to you in part by Tradier Brokerage. Take your equity and options trading to the next level by visiting try.tradier.com. That's try.tradier.com. Tradier Brokerage allows you to trade on your own terms by offering commission-free equity and options trading with no per-contract fees. You also get access to Tradier's real-time APIs and unparalleled customer service, which all easily link to your stocks to trade account. Start trading today by visiting try.tradier.com.
Going back to those misconceptions, like you'll see people like Kyle, for example, mentioning, like the first 100,000 took, this long, and then the next 100,000 took, half as long. The next 100,000 took even half of that. So then eventually you start seeing that if you've built the right habits and you've learned the hard lessons, like back then when I lost $150,000, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna come back from this. But at the same time, I felt like, if I'm a career trader, if that's my goal to be a career trader, then 150,000 might be like one of the smallest concerns that I have in the future, because that might be a daily thing, that might be a monthly thing, who knows?
You're listening to the Steady Trade Podcast, a podcast that inspires traders to make meaningful strides and pursue their passions. Your hosts are Tim Bowen, the lead trainer at Stocks to Trade Pro, Kim Ann Curtin, the Wall Street coach, and Steven Johnson, the up-and-coming trader who's always willing to learn. Together, we'll sit down with experts to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and discuss how all traders can level up their trading careers.
Well, welcome back to the Steady Trade Podcast, everybody. Today, it is Steven Johnson and we are very, very fortunate to get to interview the one and only Brian Lee. I'm going to tell you a little about his formal bio, but if any trader is watching this, you guys already probably know who he is. So we're very honored to have you here, Brian. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Brian is an independent full-time trader. He focuses on the short side of small caps. He's well over 7 figures in profits to date, but that has not been an easy journey by any means. In 2018, Brian suffered a devastating blow-up where he lost all of his profits, totaling almost $150,000. From that point forward, Brian reset his career, hell-bent on risk management. It's his number one priority, and he's a major advocate for all things risk-related, specifically the concept of risk. He's shared many of his trials and tribulations through social media, on his blogs. If you guys don't know about his blog, you've got to sign up for it. You've got to sign up for his YouTube channel. His whole entire journey, he's very forthright and honest and humble about what has happened to him, sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And he's also done an incredible interview with Chat with Traders and also with Confessions of a Market Maker, Ray and JJ, who we've had on this podcast. Aside from being a trader, Brian was also a former professional gamer. He led North America to compete amongst the best teams in the world, which can only really be described as the Super Bowl of esports. And his passion for competition, self-improvement, and striving for success has led him into the world of trading, where he now puts all his focus. And what is not included in his bio that I wanted to add on, his desire to be a contribution to other traders is just massive. And that is one of the things I admire the most about you, Brian, is how much you want to give back. So thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing just to touch on the big loss straight away, because the most poignant thing that I came across when I was researching you was it the Watt and KRTX were they one or two of the tickers which we didn't manage risk back in the day?
Yeah, Watt was one of them. I don't think KRTX, but definitely Watt. I remember that one. It's burned in my mind.
Do you want to talk us through that? Because what I've really realized is I was 3 to 4 years in, started turning profits, started trading well. And the one thing that, I'd heard cut losses quickly and stuff like that, but one thing no other traders talk about, and you're dead right in saying it in other interviews, is no other traders talk about risk management. And it's like the most
Yeah.
important thing. So if you just want to talk us through kind of what and what you've done since then to prevent it.
Mhm.
Right. So the short story is that I implemented a max loss, and that was through my broker. So luckily, whenever I breached that max loss that I set beforehand, they kind of stopped me and let me kind of analyze the situation and be like, wait, I need to slow down or I just need to walk away. Back then when I was trading, literally nobody mentioned having the max loss with the broker. Like they say, you can have like a mental stop loss, you can have a, whatever for the day. But I found that, once you kind of lose control of your emotions, it's so hard to just not try to revenge trade. And, one thing that I try to say to give hope to other people is that like, I'm not really that much different today than I was all those years ago when I blew up. It's just a matter of that, like, I found out systems and like ways to protect myself from disaster. Like it's super easy for me today, even still, to just want to revenge trade, have those emotions about wanting to fight the stock. And that was a big reason why I suffered big losses. And another thing that I don't really mention that often is that not many people were helping people who were actually coming up in the game, and like, what are the actual struggles you have when you actually find success. So like, I was really consistent for that year, and I was growing steadily, compounding my account. And eventually I started getting too big on size, and I started getting uncomfortable with the liquidity. I started getting comfortable with the slippage, with the numbers that I was seeing, just thinking to myself, like, man, if I take a loss in this trade, I'm going to lose a week of trading. I'm going to lose a month, 6 months. And, the list goes on and on if you think that you have cushion. So for me, like, I just flew too close to the sun, so to speak. I just kept growing and growing and growing. And I didn't take a pause to kind of like allow myself to really understand like what I was doing. Now, what I kind of suggest to people these days is that, compounding is one of the best ways to grow your account, hands down. And I always recommend it. But kind of an updated nuance to that these days that I suggest is that you should compound to a level where you feel uncomfortable and just sit at that for a while. Like, you don't have to raise your risk so quickly and just like gun it to the next, milestone. Like, if you're risking like $1,000 today and then you're risking $10,000 in like a month, like it's going to have a really huge impact on you. And one of the things about it is kind of the identity of the situation. You want to be able to, number one, take every loss at your stop loss and 100% accept it. You have to be able to be like, like, I know this money is a small percentage of my account. I'm comfortable with it. I see these numbers all the time. Not only that, but you also need to be able to say, like, when I'm wiring money into my actual bank account, not my, trading account, which is almost like a video game, like, I'm used to seeing these numbers. Like, a lot of times people keep all their money in their account, and then as far as I'm concerned, that's money that you can lose. Once you start wiring that money out and translating that into your real life, like, taking care of yourself or buying things or just, all your daily expenses, and just start being like, that is me. That's the level I'm at now, and accepting that that's like the time that you can start moving on. But I think it's just so difficult for people because they see other traders just killing it on social media, and they just want to figure out how to get from A to Z as quickly as possible. But like, you have no idea what you don't know on the way there. And if you manage to, get to a really high amount of risk, but you haven't learned yet those lessons that come with maturing as a trader, you're going to lose so much money just with those mistakes and have these emotional drawbacks that like really pull you into the gutter. And like, at that point, it's so difficult to climb out of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, just one thing that totally really, I mean, this interview couldn't have come at a better time because it completely relates to a situation I'm going through, is where when you make the first 50, like when you make your first 50,000, you don't want to let any of that go, I think. And you like, but when you go 2,000 down, you cut that loss. You're like, oh my God, it's $2,000. And, but then somewhere along the line between going from 50,000 to 100,000 up, it's just like risk stopped mattering. Yet it should have mattered more than ever, because I was just thinking, well, if I lose 10 grand, I'm still up 70 or I'm still up 60. And somewhere along the line, the numbers go out of control. And that's recently what's happened to me. And that's why I've sized way back down, because I'm thinking, I can't handle this anymore. I'm out of control. I'm being a psychopath in the markets.
Yeah. And I know that the last 2 months, like in small caps, have been really, honestly, very difficult. And people who make it out of that, um, it's an honorable feat. Like it has been really difficult, even for the traders that I know, like people who are really, really good at trading. It's just been so difficult. And one of the things that I experienced is that I actually went through a bit of a drawdown as well. And I think that the main thing that I learned from that, which is something I haven't shared yet, so this is new, is that I do believe that you have to size down during those times. Um, One thing that I stopped doing for a long time was compounding my account. So usually I would increase my risk or decrease it based on the P&L, but like I've been kind of freezing and holding at a certain risk level for quite some time. But what happens is when you don't adjust your risk, when things are just going sour, you just start hemorrhaging really quickly. I think what would have been more appropriate at that time, like when I started seeing signs of just like this is not working, is start compounding in reverse. So like not let myself increase, just keep decreasing the risk per day based on the account value so that I can mitigate the loss. And then the thing that I've been doing these days to like recapture and recoup all of my drawdown is to then compound up again and just start that process. And the thing about compounding, which is really amazing, is that when you're doing badly, you're going to size down and it's going to give you more options, more chances to play the market. And then when you start getting some momentum, like you start seeing that each day, and then it's motivating to see like, okay, now today I can risk a little bit more because I had a good day before. And then eventually, like the market's in cycles. So as the market is getting hotter for your strategy, you're actually going to be able to recoup those losses quicker because you allowed yourself to size down when it wasn't working.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'll let Kim jump in. I'm not sure if she's going to jump in, but a recent system that I've kind of implemented is for discipline as well. It's if you start breaking rules, whether it's adding to a loser, adding size that's outside of your initial risk, or taking a trade that wasn't part of the plan. If I do that 3 times in a month, I'll force myself to go down to 3K max size per trade. And then I'll have to work up to 4K, 5K, 6K. And that's the kind of system that I find is the only way to avoid big losses.
Sorry, before Kim goes, I had a really bad month last year, and I kept racking my brain every day, like, oh, what can I do better? What can I do better? This market's out to get me. But like when I really reviewed it and like dug deep in, I was like, it was so simple. It's just like I was just executing poorly. It was all the times that I added to a loser, I didn't respect my stop loss. All of those mistakes were the entire reason I was red to begin with. Because had I not made any of those mistakes and just executed to my plan, then I would be around break even or just a small red. Instead, I just let it kind of balloon. And so like I always try to remind myself, like the days where you start getting out of control, these are the days you're going to regret the most.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't, like sometimes I have a hot streak and I just like forget. But every time it happens to me, I remember right away and I try to like hold on to that feeling. And I feel like it's hard for traders to like always be disciplined, and you're gonna always like come back to it. But just like analyzing that and just knowing that is a fact, that's really important.
I feel as though the both of you have a level of experience because you've both been at it for so long. But to the brand new traders who are listening to us, what is it that you would say are probably the things that you didn't expect coming in as a new trader, especially because you came from gaming? Were there certain things that shocked you or really took you by surprise? And you can answer this too, Stephen, after Brian does.
Yeah, I thought that trading was going to be something that I literally wake up 30 minutes before the open and trade for 5 minutes and like make a really good living. The first thing that hit me specifically with shorting is that the fees are just out of control, and like you can win like all you want, but if you can't recoup the fees and also the losses, it's just a really difficult game, and that you kind of have to play around the fact that like everyone wants your money. Like the market wants your money, your brokers want your money. In fact, they, they're incentivized to allow you to trade as much as you want. And of course, like if you're on the short side, you have to pay for all these locates, and depending on the day, depending on the stock, it could be really, really expensive. So I realized that what I was practicing, like paper trading, was just simply not going to work in reality, because you're just hemorrhaging money, and it's a totally different game to be played, which I later found out, which is about just having a really good relationship to risk reward, and just knowing that like you need to kind of have a much larger win than you have your like a small loss, so that over the long run you actually are profitable despite not winning every single trade. And I think that like really helped my mind, and just kind of like putting it more into the poker mentality, where they're all about bankroll management and betting when the iron is hot, versus like my initial perception, which is that I was just going to win like 90% of the time. Every trade was going to be like so fast, that it didn't really work out for me. No matter how much esteem I had as a gamer, thinking I could be quick like all the scalpers.
Yeah, no, and I think for me is there's so many like wannabe short sellers who will easily be profitable for a month or 2 months, and it's almost the more you practice bad habits, the better you can think that you are as a short seller until that big loss comes. Because I think what happens with shorts, and especially like shorts who are newer, and it happens to me even now, is you'll make money for a month or 2 months, then you'll find that if you practice bad habits, you can make even more, and then you lose it all in one day. So my answer is kind of the same as Brian. It's the absolute necessity to have risk management, because you get rewarded for doing the wrong thing, and you make more and more and more, but that encourages you to trade even worse, and then you have a catastrophic day. So it's the importance of risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you feel, Brian, you keep, like, because you're so generous with your time, do you feel that all the questions that are asked of you by new traders, what are the ones that drive you crazy?
Well, I mean, this is not like, I know what you're trying to ask, but like the thing that drives me crazy is when people ask something that I've explained a million times. But I know what you're asking is basically like, what is the common question that like the misconception people have? I think it is like people want to get from A to Z real quick. And I think that I get so many messages where people are like, hey, I've been consistent for a year and like I'm not happy with my results. I feel like I should be here. I should be much further along in my journey. And like I always try to reiterate that trading is not something you can get down in a year. Like some of the most successful traders I know have taken at least 3 years of just like a huge concerted effort every single day, the full focus. Like, if you have a job on the side, it could take even longer, because like you can't completely dedicate yourself to the market, 16, 18 hours a day. And, notable people in that category, like people like Jack Kellogg, you see where he is today. We were in the same boat many years ago. In fact, like we used to just talk to each other as beginners. And it's like, he didn't just take off. Like if you look at his journey and you look at his profit lead, he had like $100 here, $100 here, $100 here, but he would consistently put up really amazing months. And he showed me that, the power of just letting those wins add up versus the thing that you see all the time, which is like X trader makes huge amount of money on one single trade and that's it. Like it's more about that, breeding that consistency, so that once you do size up, like you will be able to capitalize on your skills. So I think that like people who believe that in the first year they're going to just make it are kind of foolish. Like the first year is all about just kind of discovering what the market is. You might, there was a guy who I've been talking to who wants to start trading, and he's been studying for a year, and he tweeted today actually that like he got in first day on his broker and he fat fingered, or he didn't know where X button was on his broker. And there's like all these things you just have to learn, like these are things that are kind of intangible. Like you think that it's so intellectual that I master trading because I know how to do this, I know this strategy, whatever. But there are so many things that are going to like really hit you in the head. Like you could have a power outage, your internet could go out. You have to know what you will do in all these different disaster scenarios, and as well as you need to also be able to kind of like see the charts intuitively, and even the level 2, and those are things that you have to develop over time. The first year, if you're even green the first year, that's like amazing, because most people are deep red, and then the second year generally you start to notice patterns like, oh, I'm really much better at this and that. And if ideally if you use like TraderView or something, or you have some way of tracking like what are my setups, then you can start focusing on the ones that you historically have good results on. And then once you've honed in on that and you just practice consistency, then generally you'll start to be able to size up slowly, and then turning that into something that actually, you know, benefits you. But like, just because you're consistent, it could be complete luck. There are so many different market cycles that you have yet to experience. And even if you started in, let's say, 2020, the environment of the COVID era is just so ridiculous, and there were almost no slow periods at all. So the first time in 2021, once things started getting slow, people were freaking out, and I was getting so many messages like, Brian, is this dead? What's going on? You know, like my strategy used to work. I used to be able to buy every breakout. I used to be, you know, there was always like a 50% gapper, 100% gapper, you know, like that is the immaturity that comes with just the fact that you haven't put the time in to experience the market and understand like what are the seasons and everything like that.
Yeah, there's definitely I remember another trader said to me, once you've survived a full year of market cycles and you've learned how to trade them all, and if you can be profitable throughout every cycle, then there's a good chance maybe in the future you'll be able to do it full time. But what I was curious is, what was the first kind of pattern that clicked for you, and how did you discover it?
So I think the gap and crap.
Oh, no, it's so
Yeah,
like
that's like because the reason why I discovered it is because I used to be long biased,
same.
and like that's
Yeah.
you know, like you buy every day and you're like, why is everything dying all the time? Right.
Yeah.
And of course you're in the worst stocks possible because you want those huge percentage gains. You're like in the small caps, and like one day I just realized that I was just kind of like, I was cheating myself because I wanted to be long biased because it seemed easier. So like when you start, you're so attached to the easy. Like you don't need to read fundamentals. You can trade in 3 minutes every day, or you can be out of here in 5 minutes and just make $1,000. And you do that every day, and you're gonna be amazing. You don't have to know any charting patterns. You just have to know this and that. And so like you go in the market and you try to execute that, and then all of a sudden, you know, you hear other people saying like, oh, with a short, if you want to short, you need a specialized broker, you need a specific amount of money to start doing it. And I was like, man, that's so complicated. I'd rather just go the easiest way. But once I realized like, if I want to take this seriously and I'm just hemorrhaging money every day, really, I need to give myself the best opportunity. So instead of like having this like $5 chat room, I tried to pay for education. I mean, the guy I paid for was a scam, but luckily I met other people who were like-minded to me, so that helped a lot. But you know, I just started investing in the best tools for myself, so that getting software. So I actually did have stocks to trade at the beginning for a year, and that was really helpful for finding like what was moving and everything like that. And then I, you know, put all my money into the right brokers. And like, you know, I just did everything that I could to put myself in the best position possible, so there's no excuses anymore. Because when you're long biased, you're like, well, I cannot short, so this is all I can do. And then when you're at a certain broker, like I was at Interactive Brokers trying to short, it's like
It's nightmare.
it's ETB one day, not ETB the next day. So you're like,
Yeah.
am I even a short seller? Like I can only short what other people are
like,
going to do. And the thing, yeah,
or you're shorting at 7:30, because if you don't short at 7:30, the shares run out, and then you get squeezed all the way up because you're early. I've had these problems with IV.
exactly. So I mean, it was a little bit of that, but like the main thing I would say is, and I kind of alluded to before, is like I bought into a pretty expensive chat room because I was like, I'm going all in. And I asked in the chat like, hey, you guys, does anyone want to team up? Like I'm looking for somebody who's serious like me, like I'm going at this. And I met my first friend in trading, and then like slowly we started expanding group with his friends, with people I've met, and we started like focusing on the patterns, and that was like probably the most beneficial thing for me, just like being able to bounce off my peers, especially at the same level and like the same desire to succeed.
Are you still shorting those gap craps? Do you see MNOV today?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was a pretty good one.
And today's June 21st, 2021, in case anybody's wanting to know exactly where they're coming from. Do you feel that your being a professional gamer served you or hindered you?
It did it in the technical sense, not really. I know that's a really huge misconception from people, because they always assume like one person has that it thing and then they don't have it, so then it's an excuse for themselves. But in reality, you know, it's not really about speed or precision for me. I actually am pretty laid back with my trading. I think that what helped me the most was having success in something that was also quite difficult. So I could rely on that as an indicator, like, you know, you did something where only like 0.01% of people can achieve, and you did it in a specific way. So I applied the same mentality to trading, which allowed me to kind of like have the belief in myself, especially when things are tough. The other thing that's really, really useful actually is just the idea of efficiency. So like in gaming, you know, the more you can do with less keystrokes or hotkeys, that helps tremendously, because it's a split second kind of decision making. But in trading, like, you know, I've been able to kind of create systems for myself and hawking combinations that I just like code myself, just tinker with here and there, that can kind of do the things that maybe would take 30 seconds in like a second. So for me, like having that mindset helps just make trading easier and simpler, so that I have more time to focus on like what the action unfolding is.
The mental application of you saying, okay, I know being a professional gamer, that was hard and I was dedicated to that hard work. Just walk us through what is easily to translate over to trading. Like there were specific steps that you held to. What were those?
Yeah, so what really helps is when you define what you want and put it under a time parameter. In gaming, like we had to make a certain deadline to qualify for a certain tournament. In trading, what I find might help people is if you say like, you know, especially if you're trying to convince your parents, for example, say, hey, you know, let me have a year to give this my all. And you hear that recurring in some different stories, even like Tim Grittani, right? For example, one of the best.
Yeah.
It makes it more serious. It gives you more impetus behind your back, so that you're putting everything you have into it, and you're allowing yourself to put other things to the side because you really want to go for something. That's one thing. The second thing is having it like consume your life. So like when I'm in the shower, I'm thinking about it. When I'm waking up, I'm, you know, every meal that I'm having, I'm just thinking about trading and like how to improve. And eventually, you know, like that's one way to live, and you're listening to audiobooks when you're working out, or you're driving, whatever like that, webinars, videos, speed reading books, all these things that you can be doing, you will be doing once you put like a time parameter on it. And letting those ideas and letting those things compound on themselves is really good. But for me, I would say like the biggest thing is just having a long-term outlook. So in that way, you view every failure and every setback as a lesson to be learned from, rather than like a crippling kind of emotional debacle. So like, yeah. So if you, because here's the thing. So when I was trying to compete for this very large tournament, I mean, the prize pool was $1 million back then. Now it's like 25, 30 million for first place. So it's a pretty big deal. Even once I was invited officially So there was no chance I was going to not go. Even throughout, I felt always that I want to give up or that things were getting really difficult and it was overwhelming. But the thing that I always try to remind myself and my team is like, it's not about who we are today. It's about who we will be when we get there. And these are all lessons that we will need to learn. We'd rather suffer these losses now and learn from it than make those mistakes when it actually matters. And just like, if you can frame every kind of defeat as a learning lesson, then I really feel like that's the most like mature way to approach anything as difficult as trading is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think only certain people have that mindset as well, because like I'll be sitting in the pub with some friends and they'll be like, Johnson, did you really just lose like $18,000 the other week? Did you actually lose $18,000? Like, yeah. Like, do you not feel physically sick? And I'm like, nah, not really, because like I'm still up a bunch of money, and now losing that money means I'm one step closer to like making $1 million. It's like, if I didn't lose that money, I would never have this lesson. I'd never be a step closer. And maybe I'm delusional, but like big picture, it's a good thing because you're moving forward, right? Or am I delusional?
No, you're absolutely right. Because going back to those misconceptions, like you'll see people like Kyle, for example, mentioning, like the first 100,000 took, this long. And then the next 100,000 took, half as long. The next 100,000 took even half of that. So then eventually you start seeing that if you've built the right habits and you've learned the hard lessons, like back then when I lost $150,000, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. But at the same time, I felt like, if I'm a career trader, if that's my goal to be a career trader, then 150,000 might be like one of the smallest concerns that I have in the future, because that might be a daily thing, that might be a monthly thing, who knows? And that is truly how it is for trading. I mean, like in February, I think, of this year, I already made what I did in a full year last year. And I don't expect that to happen. It's just kind of the natural way of things. And I think that most people who that happens to, their main focus is really just on the process and just being the best they can be. I don't think that a lot of them were aiming for that necessarily. They just kind of had the right mental makeup and the right tools and the right ideas to just allow that to happen naturally. And it does happen for everybody, really.
Yeah, it's definitely nailing that process down though, and like is for you is because I know I've got specific processes for specific patterns, and I'll play longs a specific way, I'll play shorts a specific way, but then based on how a short will work out, like say for gap and crap, if it has this much volume, I'll play it like this, and if it has less volume but this resistance, I'll play it like that. Are you in a similar? Do you have similar systems or?
I keep it simple myself, which is kind of a bad thing, where I try to trade everything very similarly. And if it's not the same, then I'll just filter it out. Just because that way I am not like constantly doubting myself if I made a mistake in another play, and kind of like combine the two and just kind of treat it the same. So, like everyone goes through this where like they have a good streak and then they start like branching out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For me, the most part, it doesn't work. So I'm consistently reminded that whenever I like go out of my wheelhouse, I need to just eliminate that once it gets too severe in terms of like what am I actually doing here? And the way that I see it actually now is and you'll hear a lot of people say this eventually, is like it's a little bit better, I feel like, for your mental, just to go a little bit bigger on the ones that you know the best. And there's even the point where like you just start filtering out the ones where you can't get the size that you want. And then I don't really have any regret about missing those trades, because I'm like, well, was it really worth my time? And in fact, like at some point you don't even really need to trade every day or every month. You do need to satisfy the the trader tax status, but like in essence, trading is, in my opinion, like the reason why I got success in the first place is that I just like stuck to my one or two things and I just did them really well, versus like trying to branch out too much.
Yeah. So it's literally you've got one pattern, two patterns that you've got them down, you know the work, you know how they work, and you just trade them when they come.
Yeah, and then you just scale up over time, and then you see what you can do, and then even that in of itself is like a whole another learning experience, because like
The
you
scaling
have
up.
to, yeah, you have to learn kind of like what you can get away with, and what is possible, really. Like there are certain limitations when you're like, let's say you're one-shotting all your positions, right? It doesn't happen for many traders, but at some point, like, you can't one-shot every position, so you have to start learning how to like scale and things like that. But that's like way in the future. It's just something that you do, like, there are different levels to it, so I feel like I'd rather get through all those levels that I need to, and just kind of like on the side, on the periphery, I'm like watching things, and I'll try different things, um being a small cap guy, still I'll see the same kind of setups like in GameStop, AMC, things like that, and I'll dabble in them, and like it actually works pretty well. So that gives me confidence in the future, and I know like I eventually do want to start like trading my patterns, but as far as I'm concerned, like, as long as your pattern's like mostly liquid and scalable, um, why not just be really great at that? Because uh, I find it really hard sometimes emotionally, even though intellectually, like, oh, there are two different patterns. If if for some reason like you didn't have a great day in terms of execution, and you're trading too many different styles, it's like it's so difficult not to emotionally feel like bogged down by that. Whereas like when you're focused on one thing, one or two things, you can say like, okay, I know what I did wrong there, and then you can kind of just like pick yourself back up real quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the less you do, the better you're going to be at what you do, right? And
Yeah.
So this is a question for both of you. What is the appropriate amount of patterns? If you do feel truly that you have mastered a pattern, do you just stay in that wheelhouse, or is there at some point, especially if the market is not agreeable to your pattern, do you want to, go beyond?
Well, one thing that's really interesting and exciting as an idea is just to do the opposite when things aren't working well. There's so much potential, just realizing that like there's a totally other side to your trade. So in fact, if you master one setup, presumably you can master the opposite side, because there isn't
Wow.
probably going to be an equal reaction.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And in fact, like, the long side has so much more opportunity for exponential gains, because they don't have like a limit to how high it can go, really. There's that. But the main thing that I like to point out to people is that frequency is probably the main determinant in my eyes, because like you can have a bomb setup, but if it only happens once a month, I've seen traders really just burn out from that. I would say that you would want to at least populate your playbook with at least one setup per day, um, bar the times that are just like extremely slow and there's really nothing moving. I think at least once per day, if you can achieve that amongst your setups, that's a good enough amount of setups to focus on, because you're going to be able to interact with the market and just keep up to date, rather than like, just getting depressed because your setup's just not happening over and over and over again. And then the one time it does happen, again, it's all probabilities, right? So even if you have a 90% chance to win, it happens once a month. If you lost on that 10%, the amount of doubt that will cascade over you is just ridiculous, especially if you don't have someone to pick you up, or like who's been through that, a mentor or friend. It's so difficult.
Yeah, I think you definitely should be able to try and maybe pick at least one stock from the top percent gainers on that day. Like, ideally, I mean, because I'm like, I'll always short first green day gap as find the weakest one, try and take it. If it's still holding by 10:30, I know I'm highly likely done for, and I have to cut it. But yeah, I totally agree, because you're never gonna get those AMCs or the EV run or the weed run. You're never going to get those A++ parabolic shorts. They're like once every month, once every 2 months. So yeah. That's my answer as well. I just say what Brian does through the same microphone. That we've got the same microphone as well. I'm just literally copying Brian at stuff.
He's probably somebody good to copy, Stephen.
No, I think we just, it's honestly not that difficult. Like I mean, it's difficult, but everyone's seeing the same thing. I think the differentiator between different traders is how their style between that pattern, because there's a big picture pattern, and there's different traders trading in between those areas. They have different time frames. Really, we're all trading and learning similar lessons. Like, it all really comes down to the risk management aspect of it, and having the maturity to follow through with your plan no matter what. Because as long as you can follow through with your plan, then you're always able to pick up what's most needed to improve your trading. The problem is when you can't stick to your plan. In those situations, it's like, what are you doing here? You have to think like a professional, like a business. And it's like, I know that is really overblown, or it's not specific enough, but if I had one specific advice for that, put a threshold on your account, and then every time you go over it, just like wire that money into your bank account. It's a business now. You're paying yourself for profits rather than just letting it sit there. And just, why are we trading? We're trading for money. Number one, some people are trading for freedom. Most of us are trading for freedom and the opportunity that it allows us. And if you don't allow yourself to experience those opportunities, or reap the rewards of what you're doing, then that is like that you're not a professional. You're just here to gamble, basically.
I would 100% agree with that as well. And it's a tough one, because I see a lot of other traders like have accounts of 100,000 and 200,000 and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep my account at 30. And every time it gets to 40, I'm going to pull it back down to 30. And then one time I might let it go to 45, but I'll pull it back to 30. And it's simply for the fact that I just don't trust myself that I'm not going to blow it up. I mean, it's the truth, but I don't know how else to say it.
It is the truth. That's what, if it's in your account, it's up for grabs still from the market. Like, one mistake can wipe you out. And it really, really helps to be able to check your bank account and be like, I'm going to be fine no matter what happens. Or at least I can take care of myself for the next month, the next year, whatever. Like, that helps so much as a trader, because it's a lot of it is mental. And by having the security in yourself, you're able to trade without fear. And that, again, trading is all execution. So if you eliminate that fear aspect, then you're going to be in the best position to succeed, versus somebody who's like, I'm throwing my life savings in here. I need this to work. I quit my job. Like, you're destined to fail, or it's very difficult.
You see that a lot. But so what's your number one pattern in the short cap markets that you absolutely love executing on?
I used to love dilution a lot. And this was before COVID, where you could see a ton of overhead supply in the filings, and it was almost like a gimme, because they were just gonna, like, the pattern was so simple. It was literally just straight diagonal down, and the pops were always sold into, and it was just like, okay, this is perfect. I can just hold this all day. And nowadays there's so much volume that you can assume that the supply is being eaten up on certain days, or you'll see these sharp reversals where like chat rooms come in or shorts are covering. And I think a lot of people got really rich during 2020 and 2021. So like, people are sizing up really big, and once the big traders start shorting and covering, like, you see it on the chart. And for that reason, those setups don't come around as often, but that would be like A++. Like, if you see a juicy ATM fresh on the day, it is not traded any volume beforehand. And you're just like, this is it, because they're going to start unloading.
So you mean the effect date is just literally come in that day?
Those are the best. But these days it's really just the technical trades that work the best, because even though the dynamic of the volume increasing has changed the way that we trade or what stocks we interact with. At the same time, just market dynamics are all the same. It's supply and demand, and at some point, the buyers are going to give up, or they're going to get manipulated into giving up some one way or the other. It could happen for shorts as well, and that happens a lot of the time where they're just squeezing us out for no reason. You know, the way I see it is like, I don't believe I can predict necessarily when things are going to work for me. I just put on the risk, and if it will allow me the opportunity, I'm going to add into that, and then hopefully that will create an imbalance where my winners are much bigger than my losers. And if you study risk reward and the relationship to win rates, you'll be able to see, like, based on your average stats, like how much do you really need to win, and then that gives you more security to just put on the risk. I don't see any problem with taking multiple small losses if the idea is that you're going to get a big reward out of it, and sometimes it doesn't work. So the max loss is the number one tool for preventing yourself from over trading and getting emotional, because inherently when you're able to take more losses, you're going to be more emotionally unstable and more prone to mistakes. So you know, I think that once people understand that trading is not like pure win rate game, they can stop getting so emotional when like a market maker or whoever swipes high day every single short, besides like the people with no risk will get stopped out. Like, it's just, you have to do it, and then it slams right back down, and they take it personally. You know, like, no matter how juicy your signal is or your entry criteria, like that can always happen, especially in the lower flow game. So the sooner you take it less personally, the better for your trading. And if you can kind of mold your system around that in terms of risk reward, and just like knowing like small losses are the way to go, then the better off you will be in the end.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say, and I'll let him just jump back in, but the way I've always kind of tried to shape it, and tell me your thoughts on this, is if I know I can get 15% on a setup, like I'll always try and play the bigger picture on things. If I know I can get 12 to 15%, it's totally cool to take 2% losses, or 2% losses and a 3% loss. Doesn't matter, because ultimately, as long as the win rate on the setup's more than 50% and your risk reward always works out with the cuts in, it's a winning system. It's just a case of how much size can you do it with that you can handle without going out of control.
100%.
What did you lean into, Brian, when that 150K loss happened to you? How did you climb back up and out, emotionally, technically, all of it?
So the thing that I'm grateful for is that it was instilled early on into me that I need to focus on the process and my systems and everything like that. So I actually had a really good mathematically sound system, mathematically sound process. It was pretty efficient, and throughout that year I had a really good consistency. I attributed that one loss or those couple losses really to just the emotional hijacking in those moments when I got just so out of control with like the size and everything like that. And I just knew that I had the right process, and if I could restart this over again, I could do it. Like, I knew that I could do it. This is one thing that was in my way. Max loss wasn't really on my radar at the time, so I spent a lot of time thinking of ways I could prevent this one scenario, because this is ultimately the reason why I would fail, versus all the good things that I've done, all the good habits I've built, and all the studying I've done. So, even today, I know that if I lost everything, if I had just an account a little bit over PDT, I could do it again. And so that is the confidence in the skills that I acquired.
Yeah.
That's the thing that carried me through. And at that point, if I didn't have an easy way in, I would have done anything to come back. Like, everything I would have done would have been a means to an end to just get that account funded, because I understood, like, it wasn't luck that got me there. It was just
Mm.
a terrible situation that I feel like some traders are fortunate enough not to experience, but many great traders do actually experience that one moment that humbles them to the ground. It's a story that's repeated throughout like trading mythology. You know, Jesse Livermore,
That's
all the
just
great
about it.
traders.
That's
Yeah,
just
they all
Yeah.
market wizards. You know, a lot of
Yep.
I really, you know, I didn't explain like how it actually happened, but if I just can go back to that, like
Yeah.
on the trade, I was dead wrong real quick. Like it spiked past my entry, and I decided that instead of cutting that loss, because on that day I had a really big risk compared to what I had before, because when you have like 3-4 R gains, like it's really easy to start skipping levels. And so I had a big risk on a day, and it skipped past me. And the moments when the trades skip past you and you can't even stop out where you intended, that's where you start getting really emotional. So like
yeah.
these days, even on my calculators, when I plan a trade, I have like -1R, 2R, 3R, 4R, 5. So I know like at what price point I'm going to lose how much money exactly, even if it's outside of my plan. That helps me actually stay sane. Whereas like in that moment when I'm like, I'm just going to lose this much at this level and it spikes past that moment when it's unknown, that's when you start panicking. And if you can't control that, then you start, you know, freezing. So what happened is I averaged in again, and my average was somewhere in the middle. It pulled back eventually throughout the day. I was like, I knew it. This was a piece of shit. And when you have averaging to into a loss, you have more shares, so you have more to gain. So like when it starts coming down, you're like, think about all
Big
the
win.
money you can make now.
Big win
It's a
coming.
big win. For me, this is a big win. So you stop accepting like break even at some point, and you're like, what if I just let it go through one time? So you do that, and then it, of course, it starts reclaiming like, oh, I'm getting nervous. Goes through your break even, pops up even higher. Now you're super screwed because you've added to a loser. You do it again. Maybe on prior trades you got rewarded, like Steven said, where you got rewarded maybe for this bad action, and you're like, what if I just do it again? You do it again, comes back to your break even. You're like, now I'm even like triple, quadruple size, because and if it goes even just a little past my break even, it's going to be great. And then it rips again, and then they margin call you because they have to, you know, take care of themselves, and that's basically how I blew up my account. Now, had I had a max loss, this is what I figured out later. They wouldn't even let me execute the trades when I want to, you know, average down. And in that moment, when you realize like there's nothing you can do left to fight, you start hitting acceptance sooner. So all you can do now is either let it balloon or cut it. But the fact that you have the option to bail yourself out time and time again, that is like, that's the one thing that will completely screw you over. And almost nobody that I looked up to or that I read about or I studied, nobody was talking about anything like that. So I literally had no idea that was even an option. And had I known, I feel like that would have had a really big impact on my trading just from the beginning. Just you once as a trader, once you start going to that frenzy where you start forgetting things, it's insane. Actually, here's one thing. When it was grinding against me and I averaged in as much as I could for my account, I actually just gave up. I went to sleep. Like I stepped away from the screen because I was like, what if I wake up? I'm so tired. I'm so drained. Like maybe I'll wake up and it'll die. But at this point, like I can't. I don't know. I don't know. When I woke up, it was just way higher, and I was like, oh my god,
It'll come down tomorrow. Can it go higher? Come down tomorrow.
It's too much. Yeah, and that's, it sounds ridiculous for someone to like walk away when they're deep in the money red, but it actually happens a lot. Like that's something that happens to people who blow up. They decide to just let the fates do what it will because that's all you got.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, honestly, and this happened to me fairly recent. So like I just passed 100,000 in profits, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can't believe it. And then I was such in a period of thinking I'd cracked the game that recently I took a 18,000 loss. And honestly, by the end of the night, I was down 10 grand on the ticker. And I was like, you know what it is? I'm just going to add a bunch more into the close and just go to bed. And just, you know what it is? Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Just whatever happens. I don't even care anymore because I'm physically at the point where I can't cut the loss. Physically can't.
Yeah.
So either blow up or I have a big win. And of course, I got margin called in most of my position. But for me, the craziest thing is all of the big losses I've ever took. It's all from getting in too deep with too much size. Yeah. Because if you think, say for me, my average size of a trade is $4,000. That's it. $5,000, 2 winners is $1,000 in a day. That's more than enough for me to have a good life, right? So if my average position is 4 to 5,000, even if the stock goes 100% against you, you're not even near blown up. Even if it goes 200% against you, you're not going to blow up. So it's the fatal mistake of just thinking fuck everything and throwing a bunch of size that you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's the worst mistake you can make. Ideally, your broker can stop you, and I think it's great that you're aware that you need to keep your account at a certain level, because like it could be so much worse, honestly, when you realize that you have more to work with. I mean, as much as I'd love to say like I can achieve that super Zen state and I'm different than I was before. I really don't feel like I am that much different. It's really just been the systems, the little like hacks.
Here is what's different, Brian. You have mitigated the fact that your humanity is going to hijack you, that your physiology is going to hijack you. And now you have those systems in place. That is everything. It's everything, man.
Yeah, you just have to, I like to just plan ahead, because like, if this is part of trading maturity, is like you trade for enough time, you realize like what things like really set you off, what your potential points of ruin are. That's something to recognize. But like I hope that it's not always that way. I want to like work on it. But like for the moment when you just need something to work, like you just have to figure out what you can do.
Do you not remember Tim Grattani was always saying he would trade and trade and trade, and he knew that if he didn't take time off, he'd just get bent out and take a massive loss. So it'd actually be more beneficial. And do you not feel the same though, that you'll start bad habits will start slipping, and it's better to just walk for a week or something like that? I haven't been able to do it, but I'm just curious for you.
Kim would like me to do that, but like right now I like getting back into the game, because I feel like as a systematic trader, and you'll hear like turtle traders talk about it, Jerry Parker, like every trade that you don't take within system is going to be like brutal for your system. So like, to me, I just want to position size appropriately so that each trade doesn't really impact me too much, and that like I just let it play out. Because the thing is, I've learned that after some of my biggest losses have come my biggest gains, because like those are the extreme, like crazy moves. And one of those was like the GameStop. It wasn't a big loss on the name like in this particular day. It's just like as it's climbing higher and higher and higher, you're like, well, man, I can't win anything. But the day that it worked, I just nailed it. And part of me like wants to stick around for that. I think it's just built into the system, where I know like, if I have a max loss day, let's say like minus 10R, if my system can produce like a 13, 14R day, I know I can make it back. So that's really helpful for me to always like keep in the back of my mind, so that I'm not afraid to attack the market. And really just like through experience, through doing this for so long, I realized that even though the losses suck, if you have a positive risk reward relationship over the course of thousands, 10,000 trades, it's in your favor. And you just have to keep thinking about that like big picture again, just like As
long
as long as you
stick to
do
the
what you need to
system.
do.
As long as you stick
As
to
long
the
as you do
system.
what you,
Yeah.
yeah, just execute properly. It'll work out no matter what. As like cocky as it is to say, like it is actually like super in your favor. It's basically like being the casino. Traders use that a lot. The more hands that get played, it's almost inevitable that the house will win, and that's how I feel as a trader. That's like the confidence I have in my system.
How many years have you been at it, Brian?
I'm coming on like 5 now. Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't ask you that we should have?
I think it's did pretty good.
Okay. Stephen, any other last questions?
No, it's nice to speak with someone who started similar times and stuff like that. We started similar times. So were you full time from the start, Brian?
Yeah, full time.
Yeah, but no, it's same. Started similar times, found out similar things. I think obviously Brian's excelled much faster than I have, but it's all the same lessons.
Well, Stephen, it's like I'm familiar with your story because I did follow you, your journey like YouTube, and I know like you were still working on the side, and like we all have different trajectories and different starting points, and we also have different journeys as well. And no matter who you are, like even myself, I have a lot of jealousy, or like I have competition with people who don't even know I'm competing with them really on social media. And for me, like the biggest thing that helps is to just ignore, literally mute, just not be aware of it. It doesn't solve like the problem with me, but at least it allows me to focus on myself. And trading is just such a personal journey. Everyone has different trials and tribulations, and I feel like the fact that you're this far in and that you're still serious and focused about it, like for a lot of people it's just inevitable, I feel like, to reach the level of success they want, as long as they don't give up and as long as they manage the risk properly. Like you're past that threshold of not knowing what you're doing, not going through the emotional struggles, and like even just having this loss today, like I guarantee you're gonna not even blink an eye about it in the future, as long as you really take it to heart and understand like this is just part of the journey. And like trading in of itself is just so rewarding. It's more rewarding than I can imagine like most occupations, really, because the opportunities are so endless, and like the ability just to make sheer amount of money is just ridiculous. I think that most people need to recognize, like, even traders as sincere as maybe I come across or their favorite guru or whatever, we all portray the best version of ourselves on social media. And like I didn't post like a monthly recap when I was like feeling crappy, and I didn't really say anything about it. I just talked with my friends about it, and I know like so many people who have had hard times who like don't say a word. And so it's just so dangerous to constantly compare yourself to others.
Yeah.
I really hope that you can just like make sure, like, I know it's difficult because you're in the public eye, but like it is such a personal journey, and like you shouldn't feel bad about it at all. Like I think you know what's best for you.
No, that loss was a few weeks back, and honestly, the main learning was just get rid of everything around you, and make sure that system is the best system it can be. Make sure that the reward is, you're getting the most reward for the most risk. Make sure the probabilities are all working out, and make sure you're executing well, and nothing else matters. And then try and manage your risk and scale it up. And no, you learn that. But no, I'm super excited for the years ahead. It's a wonderful game. It's a wonderful game. It's a wonderful game to get paid to do. But it really is. It's a wonderful game. Like it's a really wonderful game.
It's also really painful and very frustrating. But in your case, I just want to ask you, what, like, did you not have a max loss on that day, or what?
So with I'm not sure what broker you're with, but for me, the main large account broker I've got is Speed Trader. And I've got maybe 1,000 max loss realized. But once that 1,000, or I had 1,500 because I've been running well. But so you can take 3 losses of $300, and then when I know I'm going to hit that realized, I'm like, well, I'm not going to take that because I'm going to be stopped out for the day. And I think, well, I'll just add and bring it down. So, but I don't know if you've got the capacity to be your max loss unrealized or realized.
So I do. So is it by choice that's only realized, or
yeah, no, it's not by choice. No, obviously, if I could like be hit at a level, because I know trade zero, you get hit at a level, but
trade zero. Yeah, I do. So I have it unrealized so that like it stops me before I can make the mistake. And then I also have a daily loss limit. So that also is on top of it so that it can't get too crazy. And like I know that it's not hard for you to just email your broker or call them, whatever, and be like, hey, take it off. But you have to be able to also think ahead. Like people who have that problem, one of the things that I really, really think about is from Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's like, if you want to avoid, some certain situation, you need to make it more difficult than it is easy. So like, I have a friend who downloaded an app that like locks his email down during trading days, or like I said, put your phone away, put it in your car. You have to, like, no matter how ridiculous it seems, I feel like there's something that we can all think about, and there are steps we can take to just make it as difficult as humanly possible to break our rules, even though they can be broken.
Yeah, no, because like I'm not ringing the broker up and being like, I would be too embarrassed. Like, there's no way I'm ringing them up and being like, oh, by the way, can you just take? I would be too embarrassed. I'd rather eat $1,000 than ring them up and ask them to take it off. But for an email, it's easy to just send an email and just say, will you put this back to this flat?
Putting the friction, lots of friction in between you and you're breaking that rule. The more friction, the better. Because at some point in the midst of all those layers of friction, you wake up and be like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, an unrealized loss is huge though. If you've got a broker that can take you out unrealized at a certain level, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I don't want to make it go too long, but like, it's not that they take you out necessarily. It's just like, you can't make it worse by like adding to it.
Really?
I think, and I think that when that happens, it's that acceptance feeling. You realize you have to cut it. And like one thing I stuck by is just always really important is like, no matter what, even if it goes against me like insane amount, like if it just parabolics or shoots through my risk, you have to cut it no matter what. There's no pullback, there's nothing. You just have to hit it at all costs. And that's something that really just saved my ass in many situations. And combining that with the max loss, that's been like really critical for me. So I feel like, if that's something that your broker is not allowing you to do, if they don't have the capability, and I know since you're not in the US, like it's more difficult, like that might be the best investment for yourself, is to actually take the time to find a broker like Trade Zero potentially that can do that. That might be the reason why you're not able to like match your expectations for yourself, or like your potential that that you have.
Yeah, I use Trade Zero as well, but maybe it's a case of where most of the funds are.
Brian, thank you. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so happy that you came on today. Is there anything, Stephen, that we need to ask Brian about before we go?
No, not from me. I think that was pretty in depth, pretty good chat.
Okay, good. And again, please, we're going to put these in the liner notes. Watch Brian's YouTube channel. There's just so much incredible information on it. And even that Chat with Traders interview, even though it's not very recent, it's also going to give you so much wisdom. It's jam-packed. And Brian's interview with Ray and JJ is phenomenal on Confessions of a Market Maker. Are there other podcasts of yours that you've done that you really love, Brian, that you feel represent you?
Of course. I Kim's podcast, Wall Street Coach.
Plug.
That well, look. I
wasn't like putting that. I just
No.
completely forgot. Thank
The
you.
thing about it is that we talked about different things, which I really liked. You know, you don't want the worst thing you can do is just go on an interview and say the exact same thing that you said the next interview. So I feel like if you put them all together, you're going to get a more complete picture, especially if it's interesting to you. So like, you know, my final words would be just, if you can somehow navigate to my Twitter, like I know some people don't have Twitter accounts, but if you can go to twitter.com/Brian Lee Trades, in my pinned post at the top, I have a link that will show you all my important information, the YouTube, the interviews, the blogs. And from that point, you can start learning more. And I try to make it as easy as possible for everyone to just kind of like see all the resources available, so you don't have to dig through it. And then that's where you're going to get the most value and the most information. It's all free, obviously.
That's awesome. That's what we'll do. We'll put that in the liner notes as well, that link that's in your Twitter handle for sure. And if you're not following Brian on Twitter, you better get to it because you're missing a lot of jewels. You drop a lot of jewels that are not just applicable to trading, but also applicable to life, Brian. So
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching the Steady Trade podcast. If you have any comments, please put them. We read all of them, and let us know who and what you want us to keep talking about on this podcast. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
All right, everyone, welcome to the podcast as always. And today I want to take you into a little bit of a segue with Kim. Kim has a new course called Trading EQ, which really helping you break down that emotional, that ego aspect. I think something that so many traders do not address. So real quick, Kim, let me know kind of like, what am I going to get in this course?
Yep. Well, you're going to get 2.5 hours of specific tools and tricks about how to address anything from fear of missing out, bag holding, over trading, revenge trading, boredom trading. I'm going to go through 4 different steps around how we're hardwired to really have our body not work for us in our trading account, how we can develop more mental toughness in our trading, and how to really follow what winning traders do.
So everyone definitely head over to steadytrade.com. Click the link. We'll link it in this episode, in the show notes, in the YouTube. Definitely check it out. Listen, I know it took me years and years and years to grasp and deal with some of these emotional and these ego-related issues. What we're trying to do, what Kim is trying to do, is take you from the 5 to 7 to, hell, I'm still dealing with it today, years and years and years, and cut that down. As you've heard me say many times, so much of trading is you against that man or woman in the mirror. Get the course, check it out, and learn and improve your trading EQ.